Hello, good afternoon. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon again. Welcome back to my channel. This is Olufemi. Um, the last time we met, we talked about some of the reasons why there's friction between us, our generation, my generation, and the generation that represents our children that we either birthed in the US or in the Western world, I don't want to be specific, or that we birthed in Nigeria and we brought them and we're raising them here. Some of the things that we discussed was our culture. The culture is the building block. And we talked about education, we mentioned faith. Today, I honestly want to talk about marriage because culturally, that's one of the things also that was one of the things that my daughter mentioned. And from my own perspective, that's a big deal. And the reason why I say it's a big deal is I've talked to a lot of people in my generation that are like, this is the way my children can't marry from this tribe. That's even a Nigerian tribe, or they can't marry from this culture. I see that maybe some of us are kind of like removed from reality. And I always like to use myself as an example. Like when I was getting married, nobody chose for me. Thankfully, my husband and I liked each other. We decided to get married. I informed my parents. One thing that we both agreed on was we wanted a small wedding. But my dad, being the dad that he was, very flamboyant, very outgoing, he was like, "No, I want a big wedding." And his mother is just like my dad. She wanted a big wedding. Did we pay for the wedding? No, they paid for it. So fast forward to our children's generation. Most of them, they're ready to pay for their wedding. So if they're paying for the wedding, they want it a certain way. But no, we always say, no, I want it this way. I want to invite my friends. I want to invite my family members. Why don't we have a conversation about those things? Why don't we sit those children down and say, listen, this is how it's done in our culture, and we come to an agreement. More and more, I see this is what happened when my daughter got married. We sat her down and we're like, it's really a family affair. So we agreed that, okay, we would have a big engagement. That way we can bring in family and friends, however many we wanted. And then the wedding was going to be determined. They chose how they wanted that. And that way, we avoided the conflict that I see a lot of families go through, unfortunately. Honestly, and I see that in our culture, yes, that's what usually happens. The parents take over. But this generation, again, we've said it over and over again, the generation that know how to push back. Our generation would not push back. Even at my wedding, you know how they say it was the night that the groom's family picks the daughter, but they picked me up from my father's house, took me and prayed for me, and then they had a big party. We only had that one dance, that first dance. After that, my mother-in-law took over. So, but their generation, you can't do that with them. So again, I say, honestly, let's talk about it, because I was upset that I'm like, it's my day, it's not her day, but she paid for it. So, but even if she paid for it, like their generation, like I said, they're ready to pay. Our generation, mostly our parents paid for us. But even if they paid, even if you paid, it doesn't matter who paid. We need to recognize that it's their day. It's the celebrant's day. It's not our day. It's their day. So that's one of the ways that we have friction. Again, let's sit down and have those conversations. One of the other things that I see that is kind of is a problem, I had talked about when I first came, I was in Chicago. And I think that I honestly don't know, I can speak for myself as a Nigerian, that I think we get excited about being in the Western world and we want our children to do certain things the way the Western world does it. And I remember back then that a lot of people, they'll say, "Oh, I'm American, I'm American," meaning this is an American child. They were not raising their children the African way, the Nigerian way, however way you want to put it. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, years later, it boomerangs. So I want to plead with us to please, as much as yes, we want to raise our children, maybe we get excited about not being in Nigeria. We want them to have this, we want them to have that. Let's pay attention to those things so that they don't become negative things in future when they're at a certain age, especially teenage years. Another thing that I've noticed is that was one of the reasons my husband and I, when we first got married, we moved a month after we got married, we moved to Iowa. And Iowa was such a population that there were only 5% blacks, majority was white. And we wanted our children to be raised in an environment where they can identify with, is not just a certain culture, that at least somebody that looks like me, so that you can balance things out. And I noticed that a lot of us, because we do so well, we live in affluent neighborhoods. So unfortunately, our children don't have that. This is the person that looks like me. Or people that live, so like the south side of Chicago or the north side of Chicago, there are a lot of Nigerians and we want to move away from Nigerians, or however, whatever the reason is. And then later on in life, we're like children, they only identify with a certain group of people. They don't identify with people that look like them. And it becomes an issue with the parents. So I'm just saying, when they're younger and we make certain decisions, we need to think about long term, so that at the end of the day, it doesn't become something that we're fighting against or something that we're complaining about. Again, today we talked about the disparity between our children's generation and our generation. I think that most of us parents we're not we're far removed from what's going on in this generation, and it's become an issue. We talked about marriage, and we talked about the how we raise our kids, the environment we raise them in. Thank you for coming along. If you like what you've heard, or if you like what you hear, please share this channel, post it on your other social media platforms. Thank you for coming along. See you next time. God bless you.